Post game colorful kit with John Arnold. Yeah. What how'd you feel about the game?
Mexico's in the final. I think that's significant. I know this that a lot of people think this is a Molero tournament that people don't really care about the Nations League, but it's a trophy that Mexico doesn't have, and this looks like their best ever opportunity to win it. With all respect to Panama, do you like Mexico's chances against Panama better than you like them against the U.S.? And I think you like them even more than you like their chances against Canada tonight. And they took care of business and got the job done. Sure, we'll get into some of the incidents. I feel like in a weird way, you say, oh, Mexico won 2-0. A lot of the concerns that you had before the match didn't really materialize. They had no problem scoring. Raul's back. Santi looked fine. Edson was good. But like it could have gone a little bit differently too. If that penalty gets called in the first half, you're talking about a different, situation. That's not what happened. But, I think that my snap reaction is it's a really good result for Mexico.
Well, first things first, what do you think of the lineup choices? I feel like he threw us a curveball. I feel like the last couple weeks he did not say he was going to start those two guys, and I think fans were resigned to the fact that they weren't going to start, and then rumors started popping up 2 hours for the game that hey, they're starting, they're starting.
I feel like Aguirre was sort of coy about it, and he kept saying like, they could start together, and I was kind of, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting tactically. I think that it almost feels a little bit of a throwback. You don't see a lot of managers doing that these days, but at the same time, like the international game requires that, right? And Aguirre is a guy who doesn't care what's sexy or what's in style. Not talking about his clothing, although it could be, but like I was sort of more like, "Oh, he's actually doing it," than, like, shocked, you know?
Yeah, I was kind of excited when it was going down. I was curious to see. I was almost resigned to the fact that I don't really care if we win or lose. I was just kind of, let's try shit. We're 15 months away from the World Cup. You're not going to have all these players for the Gold Cup because of the Club World Cup and, where things pop up. So I was just thinking, this might be your one shot to try this in a competitive game. And I was happy he tried it. And I mean, obviously, there's still some things in the lineup I didn't like. Charlie Rodriguez. I mean, we all know how Mexican
No one ever likes seeing Taylor Rodriguez, right?
but I think he played a role where, not to be negative, but he played a role where he's not the creative midfielder. So he was not being relied upon for that, right?
Yeah, well, not only Charlie, but I think, like, a guy who didn't start, but, like, Orbelin sometimes gets tossed into this, like, "Oh, you're Messi." He's never gonna be Messi. I think he can be good at what he does, and I think Charlie's in the same boat, actually. Like, you see how well he plays with his club. He's not a bad soccer player, but he gets put into roles with the national team that he doesn't excel at, and I think that's the difference. Or, like, and that's for her, part of the fun of this is that, like, the club game and the international game are different. But sometimes you get a situation like Santi or like Charlie where you're just like, why doesn't it work? But yeah, I hear you. I think that that's like a pretty fair criticism. But yeah, I don't think Charlie did any damage.
Yeah, I don't think he did any damage or anything like that. He was invisible, and I guess that's not the worst thing that happened in the world. If you're right in the middle, you're just kind of going with the flow. He didn't do anything bad, anything, or I was like, what is he doing? It's just more like, all right, he played his role. And to your point, he might be playing a more similar role tonight with Mexico than he usually does with Cruz Azul. Is that fair to say for
Yeah, I
him?
think so. I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when you have Alexis Vega in the match and you have Santi and Raul, like any responsibility you feel as a creator, like a lot of the kind of like those midfielders, I don't think that feel like, oh my gosh, I have to make something happen because they can, oh, I can safely pass the ball either to the wings coming forward, or I can try and play forward to a guy like Alexis, and then make, it's his job to make something happen. So I do think it alleviates some of the pressure that, like, a guy who's more comfortable, even if he's a two-way midfielder, guy who's more comfortable maybe in the defensive aspects of the game. I do think it makes a difference. I think that's fair, like Lita as well, right? Like he's not being asked to push forward, but like everyone I think was put in a place where they're relatively comfortable playing their role, even if it's not something they always do, and that's the strength of an international team. And plus, the pressure was off from minute one too, right? Like you score early, and all of a sudden your life gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and just to kind of put that in perspective, Eric Lida and Charlie Rodriguez combined between them had no dribble attempts.
But hey, you don't have to. You don't.
They didn't have one dribble attempt, and yeah, they kind of just were pretty much stationary. They were kind of like, we're gonna say pivot here. Everyone around us to push up and do what they got to do. Another guy I thought that was in the same boat as Charlie, kind of invisible, kind of not, to do good or bad, is Gallardo on the left wing or on the left, whatever position he kind of played up there.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he was one of the names that Aguirre gave. You know, he's in this habit that the Mexican press, David Morano, I think specifically wants to push him into, where he names 3 starters before every game. And he usually picks the goalkeeper, which he did. He said, "Oh, Malagon will play." And then he said Jesus Gallardo. And I was like, man, like I actually thought this might have been the camp where like Gallardo kind of gets phased out.
But who?
But at the same time, first of all, but who? And second, like when you're playing a situation where, like, I think people forget that Gallardo came up as a winger, right? Like he is a more attacking player. That's what he's comfortable with. And so when you're asking them to do a little bit more than just be the sort of standard left back, I actually think he's a really good option there. So I kind of, once I saw the formation, I felt like the Gallardo inclusion made a little bit more sense and kind of got why Aguirre had him on the mind in his press conference.
Yeah, because I'm in the same boat. I've bashed Gallardo before, but I'm just looking at the lineup. I'm like, who can you confidently say, hey, you should give so and so a shot instead of Gallardo? We didn't have Arteaga at camp. I don't know who else you can play out there that's comfortable playing that wingback position because it is a little different than just a normal run of the mill 4-4-2 fullback and a back line of four, which Mexico didn't play. They played a back line of Alvarez, Vasquez, and Reyes. And looking at the SOFA score ratings, those guys had the highest ratings on Mexico besides Jimenez.
Yeah. I think the defense, I think Edson specifically, man, you know, I think you've seen him as a midfielder play really well with Mexico, but sometimes when he's been asked to play center back, I don't know that he's had his best performances. I think sometimes it can be difficult to be doing something you're not doing all the time with your club, especially the pressure of like doing that in a Mexico shirt where like that was Rafa Marquez. That's what he did. And he's there. There he is, like on the bench, looking
That's
at
your
you,
coach.
telling you to do the same thing. And I think that can be an intimidating situation. I thought Edson really rose to the occasion tonight. He's after Raul. I think he's probably my second, you know, man of the match. Hockey 3 stars, right? They give the
Yeah,
three
yeah.
stars after a game. I'll give him my second star just because I thought that he really rose to the occasion, handled the back line well. And I think that the stats services are going to overrate when a defense gives like a clean sheet, just like when a player scores, oh my gosh, it's a 9.8 or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Like, I mean,
it's
kind of,
deserved.
yeah, and kinda like we're talking the ratings. Jimenez SofaScore score game at 6.6. I thought he played well. He did the role. He stayed in front. He kind of let Raul Jimenez play that role where he kind of popped up everywhere, and Jimenez tried to be the furthest player forward to Mexico. And I know fans might harp on the fact that he didn't score, but I thought he kind of pushed the line and played his part.
To me, it was, yeah, one of his better games. It's his best game in the Mexico shirt since he emerged, since he
Com
became
complete
a
best complete
star.
game.
I think he scored in the Gold Cup final. That's still the biggest moment. That'll be the most important goal until he scores another one, but he did enough to stay kind of in the on the field. I can't remember the minute, but there was a moment where kind of exactly what you're describing. Like Raul had the ball and was kind of pushing up the wing, and Santi made this run, and I can't even remember if it got chopped out or like if it just didn't come to anything. But like that's exactly what you need to be doing if you're the second attacker in that situation. And I think it also speaks well to the chemistry, right? Because, tonight Raul scores 2, but it's entirely possible that Sunday we're sitting here talking and it's Santi that has the goals. That's how a team works. And I think yeah, it's a good night for both Jimenez's if Mexico scored goals, which they did.
Yeah, I thought Jimenez Santi played well, played his part, and I think when you make those runs for 90 minutes, 88th minute, you're making another run. It's like if you have the confidence that your teammate's going to get you the ball, you're going to make that run. Because I feel like when you watch Mexico over the last 18 months, you see these forwards make runs, and then the runs half the time end with them just throwing their hands up, saying like, "Why am I not getting the ball?"
That's what you hear people say. Like, I don't totally agree with this. I don't. I'm not big on like criticizing individual players, and I think Santi's a fantastic player, but I do think that he's had opportunities. You hear a lot of people say, "Well, why are you criticizing Santi? The team around him is bad." I don't think that's necessarily true with him, but I agree with you that there's often a lack of cohesion in the Mexico attack, and I think tonight you didn't see that as much. And I think some of that's formation. I think some of that's experience. I think some of it, like Canada's defense is good. Canada's defense is actually really good.
They were the favorites tonight. They were the
Yeah,
betting favorites.
yeah, but I think that, Mexico did a nice job individually. Santi, you can talk about what Santi did well, like his battle with Moise Bombito, who I think is the best player on Canada's back. Well, okay, no, he's not. He's the best raw defender. He's not better than Alfonso Davies, but he's a good defender, a good player. And I
It
think
was
that
a
they were
battle for
battling.
those 2
They
guys
were
all
battling
night.
all night. They were pushing. They were in each other's head. I think that stuff also matters, right? If that defender feels like I can't switch off for a second, I can't lose this guy, that opens up space for someone else, right? Yeah, overall, like I said before the game, I wrote, I did a TikTok, like I said, Santi is this is a moment where he has to step up. And even though he didn't score, I do think that he did enough tonight to where you say, yeah, there's enough signs here that maybe this guy should also start in the final.
On the flip side, if there was one weak point or a thing I did not like watching tonight, Malagon, a little shaky. He came out 3 or 4 times, and we're used to seeing when the keeper comes out and it's a jungle, the ref almost 9 times out of 10, "Oh, there's a foul, it's a foul." The ref did not give those fouls, and there was an empty net a couple times, and what are your thoughts on Malagon? Did he do things to solidify his number 1 status, or is there still questions hanging around? Mostly a Guillermo Ochoa size question.
So I'm a bit of a Malagon truther. I think that he is good, not great. I think that he commits like an outsized number of ulsos for like a goalkeeper that's Mexico's number one. We didn't see that tonight, but I agree with you that there's moments of shakiness that probably shouldn't be there for a number one. I'm not gonna lie and sit here and say that like I'm watching Guillermo Ochoa's, positioning in the Portuguese matches that he's playing. Frankly, I don't have time for that. I'm watching if people follow me, they know I'm watching like sicko Bermuda matches. But like I do think that he still has a role to play for the national team if he wants it. I think the ideal situation, to be honest, man, would be for Malagon to keep the number one job to get better
Mhm.
and for Ochoa to be this like mentor who shows up
And
and
I
like
think he already is. I mean, Malagon has spoken about how at his time at Club America, looked up to Ochoa and he was there for advice and things like that. And like the keeper's such a weird position where I feel like it's more mental than anything. If you're
in that
confident,
first not to interrupt you, man, but in that first game, Matt Turner of the US probably should have saved the opportunity
did
that
you happen to
Panama
see
had.
Tony?
Tony Meola was talking about it after the game, former US goalkeeper, and I think, like, he's right, and one of the things that the US press is harping on is that Turner's not the starter. He's not in rhythm, he's not getting games, and I do think that's important, especially for a position like goalkeeper where you are but at the same time, like, Mexico, specifically with Ochoa, had a period where, like, Ochoa wasn't the starter, and he was a starter for the national team, and it worked out fine. So it is a weird, quirky position. I'm not advocating for Ochoa to be the starter again, but I do think I don't think that Malagon is as good as his backers say. I also don't think he's as bad as his critics say. I think a lot of times in Mexico as well, you also have like Chivas fans want to see Rangel in there. America fans think he's amazing because he's the America goalkeeper. Like I don't know. I guess obviously coming from this like weird American neutral perspective, like I see both sides of
Yeah, I got a little jumpy when he came out, and he did it 2 or 3 times in a span of, like, 6 minutes where Canada was just bombing crosses in, and I got a little nervous. There was one time, even the announcers were expecting a foul call. They're like, "Not a foul," and I think was it Eric Lida who, like, just cleared it off the line a little bit? I was getting a little nervous there. That was the one player I thought
the advanced numbers don't like him that much either. I think if you look at some of the, some of our nerd friends who do the, like
expected goals
PPSA
and
and all those sort of numbers, like they don't love Malagón either. Like I said, I think he is probably the right answer for Mexico number one in 2026, but yeah, I think there's also work to be done there.
looking ahead to Sunday, roll out the same lineup, do you think? If you're Vasco, do you make any changes and tweaks?
Here's the thing is I'd say like no. I actually think you can put Montes in there. He's ready, yeah.
I mean, it was just yeah, he was suspended for this game, no?
A suspension because of the yellow card
Yeah.
accumulation. I think which actually kind of takes talent to pick up a yellow card in both legs of a two-legged situation. But yeah, I think I would put Montes in there, move Alvarez back into the midfield, and maybe take Charlie out, and then but then do you tweak your formation? Do you do something a little different? I don't know. I do think I would want Montes in there just because of what he does, and I think I would push Alvarez Edson back into a position that I think he's happiest in. So I think from there you have some options and other things that open up. So I would probably make some modifications. The other thing is legitimately, man, we're talking right now at what
Midnight Eastern?
9:50. I was going to do Pacific.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
LA. Let's say 10 o'clock. By the time the
Yeah.
guys get back to the hotel tonight, it'll be 11 o'clock. And so yeah, it's a 72-hour turn. It's a tight turnaround. It
I
really
mean,
is
no
a tight
travel.
turnaround.
I
So
mean,
no travel.
yeah.
So yeah, I think you could roll out kind of the same lineup if you want to. And Panama's obviously in the same situation. They had 2 hours more of rest. But overall, I
They
think
also had a much less intense game, I feel like somehow. That game was
for
we
sure
talked a
less
little bit beforehand, but
physical.
that game was boring.
It was boring and it was less physical, right? I think that Mexico Canada, it was a physical game. You talk about like the announcers were expecting fouls. I was
Yeah.
expecting fouls, but like a lot of times it was a Honduran referee. we know Honduras, man. They let the boys play, and sometimes that worked to Mexico's benefit on that penalty shout and everything. So yeah, I think there could be some recovery that needs to happen, but with the technology and the fact that these guys are top pros, I think you roll out a pretty similar lineup. But I'm of the opinion that the more you can get, especially looking toward the World Cup, the more you can get Montez Vasquez together, the better. So that's the one tweak I would make, and then the changes that you have to make around that. I mean, you could. I think he was good tonight, but you could even take Reyes out and do a back three with Edson again. But I don't know. I think you probably go back to a flat back four with Montez Vasquez. Gallardo, I guess, is keeping his spot, and then
Does the fact that
you
it's in
do have to
Panama
figure out what
and the
you're
fact
right.
that you're gonna have the ball more than Panama affect? Because I'm looking at it, if we keep the same formation, you move Edson to the midfield, and then you take the other midfielder, lead out, and put in Luis Chavez. Because hey, we're gonna have the ball more because it's Panama. You want Luis Chavez in there a little bit more offensively, but then you also have Edson next to him still.
No, definitely, and I think also, like, I think that could be a really good setup, and I think that, like, one thing that we didn't really need to see tonight because of the Raul free kick was, like, what does it look like when Mexico pushes for a goal late? But, like, right now in this setup, you're bringing Julian Quiñones and Chino Huerta off the bench. Those guys have speed, those guys have tricks, like, those are the right guys that you want to come in off the bench to frustrate a defense, especially one like we kind of expect from Panama, where we think they're going to sit, we think they're going to have a back five, we think they're not going to venture forward too often. They're not going to want to see those fresh legs. That's what the U.S. didn't do, right? The U.S. didn't bring on Gio Reyna. The U.S. didn't bring on Diego Luna. They didn't bring on these creative players. Those guys are a little different profiles than Quinones and Huerta, but still, same idea, right? So I think Mexico definitely should feel good going into this game, and the number of changes you want to make, I think, like I said, down to what you feel like your best 11 is and kind of how you sort of view the game plan. You got to prepare for extra time, penalties, all that stuff too, right? So I think you
Yeah,
probably
you
want to
gotta
keep some
prepare for
guys
that.
fresh and yeah.
Well, last quick, we kinda touched on it real quick. Just give me a quick 30 seconds. What are your thoughts on the USA? I mean, I mean, I'm not surprised that they lost, like, necessarily, like, it's not like they're that much, what in form or whatever, but that was just a crappy performance.
Okay. Like kind of takes the luster off of Pochettino.
Honeymoon's over?
Not yeah, exactly. Not anything that he necessarily did wrong, although I do think he messed up in that game by not going to the bench more and earlier.
Luna, I thought that was a perfect game for Lu bring Luna in there.
Yeah, and Luna's such a weird case because, like, they didn't put him on the Olympic squad for some reason. He's just a different player, right? And I think sometimes, like, they look like talking in the context of this podcast, like, I think people sometimes are like, he's different because he's Latino, right? He's different because he's Mexican American. And, like, yes, that comes through in play style with him, but also people do ask the question fairly. It's like, is it a cultural thing? Like, why is this guy not advancing the same way as other
The coach
guys?
is Latino.
And that's the thing is I think with Pochettino, I was sort of under the impression like a guy like Zendejas, who is the best player in Liga MX
Who's
this
the best
year?
player on the best team in North America?
You didn't call it?
Roughly. I mean, you can tell me Club America is maybe not number 1. They're not lower than top 3.
So, like, all that aside, overall, take some of the luster off Pochettino. I think he's a really good manager still. I think he figures it out, but I think, anyone who was expecting it to be plug and play now the US is a World Cup contender, it's a big wake up call. It's not going to be that easy. The US still has the same players. Just like when Mexico fires Diego Coca, just like when Mexico fires Jaime Lozano.
Can't change the players pool
Uh,
overnight.
you still got the same dudes. You
Yeah.
still got the same. The new manager arrives and they figure out, oh, that guy who is the guy everyone hates that plays left back or that plays central midfield. There's a reason he's in there.
Yeah, I was watching a game and like I wasn't watching it too closely, but at the end of the game when you're pushing for a goal, I was like, "Are you making another sub?" I mean, took Sargent out, put Patrick in there, and then he put it in Jack McGlynn, and I was like, "Okay, you're dominating the ball. Let me get someone else, something else." And nothing happened. And I was shocked.
That was an Osorio special too, when it would be like Jack McGlynn wasn't on the initial roster, but then all of a sudden he's like the first guy off the bench, and you're like, why? If you thought he was going to be part of your game plan, then why didn't you put him on the initial roster? I don't.
Didn't that
But
happen to Antuna? His first Gold Cup, he wasn't on it, and then I think he got added at the end, and then he scored like 4 5 he
that
led
was
the
the one
Gold
where
Cup in
yeah,
goals.
he scored tons of goals.
I mean, most of them against Cuba and whatever Caribbean countries, but that's neither here nor there.
That's like a SAT analogy. Oriella Antuna is to whatever as Jesus Ferreira is to the US.
He wasn't on the roster either. It's
Nah,
just
he's not on the net.
I mean, you had this roster Gio Reyna, that's a different story for a different day. Go listen to your U.S. men's national team podcast to go with that because there's a lot of conspiracy theories on Gio Reyna right now.
Yeah. But no, look, for the Mexico fans who are the bulk of your listening audience, I think it's like, it's a fun time, right? You can potentially lift the Nations League trophy, take that momentum into the Gold Cup, and then whoever does well this summer, I think is gonna feel good about 2026. Maybe not, man. We kinda all think, look here, I'm the CONCACAF guy, right? And I want CONCACAF teams to have success, and I want this stuff that I do to be about teams that are good and matter, but, like, maybe none of the North American teams are good, or maybe they're all good, but it kinda seems like maybe not.
And with this new World Cup format, who the hell knows what's gonna happen?
There are gonna be a lot of teams.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, John Arnold. Where can the people find you? I know you're all over the place. I loved your newsletter. Where you at?
Yeah, I think the newsletter is the best way for people to keep up with what I do. I try and link out to the places I'm freelancing and stuff in the newsletter. It's getconcacaf.substack.com, or you can just Google "Getting Concacaf." I'm on Twitter at Arnold, John, Blue Sky, TikTok, and YouTube at John Arnold FC. And John doesn't have an H in it, so if you can't find it, that's probably why.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. And yeah, let's see what Mexico does on Sunday. I mean, we kind of expected USA versus Canada. We just didn't expect it for the third place game.
I put on Blue Sky all the political tension, none of the stakes.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys.